Happy summer! A year ago today, I recorded a video on math reform from my classroom, and I've spent the last few months recording lots of videos for my students on the different math lessons that we did as part of distance learning. When we last left our heroes, that's what we were doing for months on end. We were doing learning from home, and I think we could all agree that it was not ideal. It was rough. It was rough for many reasons. We had to throw it together right away. We didn't have time really to plan it. We had to just work with what we had, and no one had time to plan on any end. Parents did a superhuman job of helping their kids as much as they could. It did not work in a lot of ways because equity was a huge issue. If you didn't have a safe home, if you didn't have parents and resources like internet, you were basically screwed the whole time. And so I'm filming this video today to talk about the hot button issue of our time in education, what to do about fall 2020, which is right around the corner. I spent much of last week reading articles, watching videos from the perspective mostly of politicians, also from national writers of various publications, basically imploring schools to reopen in the fall, that we must reopen in the fall. And I'm going to make this video to offer a teacher's perspective. I do have one of my lovely math shirts on, so you can remind yourself I am a high school math teacher. And not just from a teacher's perspective, but now from a parent's perspective. I am a proud parent of a daughter who turns 8 weeks old tomorrow, and that has been quite the journey while the pandemic has been undergoing. So here we go, fall 2020. I'm going to speak about this in terms that are going to try and just present the whole picture, and then I'm going to lay out what's been done, my thoughts on it, what's being proposed, and then at the end, what I think of as a solution that I want to see happen. So I'm going to talk about what's happening and then also present, hopefully, something that'll help. So first of all, let's talk about what's happening. We have a continuum right now, a huge debate that's become, unfortunately, very partisan between do we prioritize safety and security, or do we prioritize childcare and the ability for working parents who work outside the home to be able to leave the house, go to work, and know that their kids are taken care of. What do? We have one side where we could say, let's open up schools, let's just bring all the kids back and pretend that there's no virus. That is a quote-unquote solution that leaves teachers like me, but even more than me, teachers in the high-risk population, basically as lambs to be the slaughter, and their lives are not valued. Similarly, students, many of whom are high risk, if everyone just went back in the same format, even though, yes, maybe the chances of the virus spreading between kids is lower, it's not non-existent, we would still end up with many thousands of sick and potentially dead kids and dead staff members. And that is not something that I would ever call a solution. And part of the reason for making this video is to try and have some counter voice to this narrative that that's what we need to do to ensure that we have daycare. Because, like I said, I'm a parent now, I have lots of friends, family, students in all sorts of situations. I get we need to have childcare. We need to have a solution that provides childcare. And so on the other end of the spectrum, we have distance learning from home, which I just mentioned in the spring did not work well. And if we did it the same way in the fall, the same way for the whole year, it would continue to not work well. We would have so many of the same issues of equity, lack of resources, anxiety through the roof, a difficulty of kids just organizing what classes to do, when to do it, elementary school, middle school, high school, across the board problems. People separated from their friends, separated from activities that make them feel normal. So we can't just have distance learning as it was in the spring too, because even though we would have safety for the most part guaranteed, we would not have the socioeconomic status and health of kids, but we also wouldn't have the childcare component that we need to have. What's been interesting is the rollout, starting in the last couple weeks, of the proposed solution for many school districts, where the hybrid solution that's being proposed is basically let's split the kids into cohorts or groups where kids will go to school part-time, maybe every other day, maybe every other week, and staff will go to work mostly full-time, where kids will have like a part in-person learning, part distance learning. Meanwhile, teachers will somehow provide everything rigorous and safe for in-person students and for students who are home simultaneously. I cannot believe, honestly, that this is the solution that is coming up with from a political stance, from an educational stance, and that this is being rolled out as the norm. This does nothing to solve both issues that I talked about. Safety is not there because staff members are still going into work. They're still seeing all their kids in theory by the end of the week, even though it's spaced out. They're seeing other adults. It's not a solution that works. Same thing for kids. Meanwhile, childcare, if you have to somehow plan for childcare multiple days a week or every other week, that puts tremendous strain on parents, and they're not going to be able to really go back to work full time, even in that situation. So I don't like this solution for all of those reasons. And that includes every single version of this solution. Whether kids stay in the same room all day and teachers switch around, whether you disinfect classrooms repeatedly or have one subject at a time immersive at the high school level for 2 weeks. I've read a lot of these ideas. Any version of that where kids are coming to school regularly and staff are around is gonna be a problem. It's gonna be a problem with safety. We're gonna have huge outbreaks and we're gonna have to shut it down. And now we're going to have videos where we're talking about scrambling to come up with a solution after the fact. Instead of being able to be proactive, we'd end up being reactive, just like we were in the spring. We can't do that. Instead, I think this is what we do. We come together as a community in the ways that really we should all the time in schools. We don't just lay this all on teachers and students and say, figure it out. Here's my kid for the whole day. Make it work. I got to go to work. And it's sort of an isolated solution. Instead, here's what we do. Here's what I'm proposing. We have different categories of students and situations right now. We have students who honestly did quite well in the spring. Whether it was because they're more introverted, they were fine with the rigor of distance learning, they had good support at home, they had a good setup to see friends when they needed to, they thrived. Those students, great. We can roll out distance learning in the fall and you'll be okay. Then we had students in the middle who did okay for a while, maybe initially until they got burnt out and gave up, or they had sort of a roller coaster of good one week, not good the next week. If we just made a much better version of what we did in the spring, I'm confident that that group could be okay. Whether that mean that the quality and the quantity of the work was better, that the explanations were better, the resource management was better. We just tweak what we have and maybe add some layers of intervention, like able to check in individually with kids. Everybody has their own little cohort, like elementary school teachers do, where you're calling homes regularly. Basically, people are falling through the cracks at a much lower level than they did in the spring. That covers that group of people. But then we have the much more difficult groups. The groups that it either worked barely in the spring, or frankly, it didn't work at all. And this group is huge, either because they didn't have internet at home, they had one computer they're sharing between a ton of people, they have no safe space, no safe parents. They were just screwed. And we had lots of kids at my school who sadly did not get off the ground. Even kids who had A's and were doing great in person, they did not engage at all. And this was a common theme from talking to friends at their schools as well. So what I propose for them is that we create structures analogous to what we do for younger kids with daycare, where if you don't have daycare and parents have to work, I have friends who use a nanny shared system where one parent who's home will maybe take in 4 or 5 kids. There are, of course, formalized daycare systems where daycares will take care of kids part of the time, all day. But we really don't have that past the age of 4 or 5 because school ends up being that. Well, now that school is not safely able to be that either right away in the fall or surely once these second phases and so on spike up throughout the school year, we need to create that for older kids. We have a ton of resources right now in our community that we're not using. Churches that can't open, community centers, office spaces that honestly might not open till 2021, 2022. We also have so many wonderful volunteers, potentially parents, people with no kids, just tons of resources, people who are laid off, where we could build in a structure and have these different sites, almost like safe internet cafes, where instead of having to bring back half the kids part of the time, which at some schools, that's thousands of people, we make it smaller. 5 to 10, maybe it's 5 at someone's house. So you're always having a cohort group of friends that can work on the work together, that can have that socio-emotional piece. And even if there's a shelter and home place order that has to go like there is in Oregon, at least there was months ago, and that happens again, kids are still learning, they're still able to get support, they're still able to see their friends, even a small group of them, safely and securely. And we could provide this on sites for kids who don't have that period, whether that be at a church, whether that be at a community center or otherwise. That frees up the school building itself to still be used, but to be used for the kids who absolutely need it the most. I'm talking about the kids with severe 504s, IEPs, individual plans where, whether it be because of something going on mentally, physically, they need one-on-one support, small group support, pull-out support. And those kids, especially in the spring, stuck at home, not getting any of that, it was a nightmare. And so school buildings can be set up to house the most needed group of students and in a safe way, whether that be low risk staff individuals that can come in and help out, whether that be outdoors from a safe space with maybe some of their teachers who are well trained, who may be in more of the high risk, or if none of that is possible in terms of safety, we could still do a virtual model, we could still do maybe house calls. There are lots of solutions in this vein that I've seen friends do. The big point is we need to create a hybrid, not of everybody going to school, but just splitting up every other day, and teachers somehow going to school full-time, somehow at home dealing with their own childcare needs, especially when the kids aren't going to school for the part-time, somehow simultaneously teaching in person and the people who are distance learning still, while putting themselves at risk every day. That's not a solution. Politicians, it's not. Instead, let's come up with something that utilizes facilities, utilizes resources in the community, either as a formal or informal partnership with the schools, so that every population of students, whether you're great at distance learning already or whether you need tremendous interventions, you get taken care of. And it prepares medically for, even if you're in a place right now where you're listening to this video and you're like, we're good, we have basically no cases, everyone's going back in the fall. Well, first of all, congratulations. Secondly, that's not the case nearly everywhere, and it's not guaranteed to be the case where you are in the future. So let's come up with something that prepares for November with the flu season, that prepares for the whole year. And I believe that if done right, done intentionally, and done early, one of the reasons I'm getting this out now is that we still have some time in the summer, it can be a real solution that works to provide both childcare and safety to both students and staff. Thank you so much for listening to this video. Let's help get this idea out there. Let's help put this into the conversation as people are brainstorming like mad to come up with the right solution for the fall. The final thing I will say is that schools need funding more than they ever have. State budgets are ravish. Tax money is so low given the shutdowns for months. Congress, I'm looking at you. Find a solution, because whatever you choose, and especially if you expect teachers and students to come into school, it needs to be safe. We need to have money for equipment. We need to have money to set up everything. And we just frankly don't have that right now. So please, put your money where your mouth is, provide that. Until next time, have a great summer. It's unique times that we're in, but we can come together and we can solve this. I'm confident in that. Much love. See you in the fall. One last point that I forgot to say before when I filmed this initially. I have to talk about and address this idea that kids, students of all ages, will be able to go to school and that they will somehow be able to socially distant, with or without masks, stay away safely from their peers, from their boyfriends, girlfriends, and that is somehow enforceable. If you think that, I urge you to go meet a teenager for the first time, or hang out with a group of younger kids. It goes against everything natural that we have. I think that's one of the things that's made this time in the pandemic so difficult, to space out from each other, to not play with each other, to not be together. And it's already so tough normally in a high school setting to keep kids from trying to sneak out, to go to the bathroom, to meet up, friends, boyfriend, girlfriend, to vape, to all these different things. If we tell students you're going to be in the same room all day with these same cohort of kids, which probably is not going to include your best friends, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, it is going to turn into the most unenforceable mess of all time. And it's going to turn into a game where people are just trying to sneak out and go see their friends and their boyfriends and their girlfriends. And even if it somehow works, especially at the younger grades, we're going to provide so much trauma for kids who have to look at their best friends, who have to see the people they want to be close to and play with, and end up getting into a mindset where they can't do that, where they feel like there's this invisible barrier wall between them. That is not going to work. And so please, all these solutions that are being thrown out that include that, no. As a teacher, I'll just tell you right now, and I'm sure I'll hold the echo of millions of teachers around the world as I say this, is not going to work. You're not going to be able to enforce that. So don't have that as an aspect to your solution. Okay, thanks for hearing that last point.